Jason, can you hear and see us okay?
Yep, I got you.
See the other camera okay?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
So some of these mics don't have lights on, Greg. That whole air side doesn't
Are
have.
you plugged in?
Can you tap?
Okay, you're...
Tap your microphone. Tap your microphone. All right, it's 4:32. Meeting is called to order. Kathy, roll call, please.
Mayor Chapman?
Here.
Councilmember Bean? Here. Councilmember Furby? Here. Councilmember Halverson?
Here.
Councilmember Scanlon is excused.
Okay. Just right at the top of the hour, I just want to wish the Ishpeming girls and the Nagani girls a good luck, and we'll be all cheering them on. And if you can get down there and cheer our girls on. Yes, pack the Breslin Center. Okay, can I get an approval of the agenda, Des?
Your Honor, I was wondering if we can move item C to put above item A on the agenda.
I will support that motion. Okay, anybody have any questions, comments? Hearing none, we are moving C to above letter A. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to public comment. You have a limit of 4 minutes per person, and you can also reserve time to speak at any point during the agenda if you would like as well.
I would like to reserve time under item 5E.
5E, okay. Is there anybody else? Okay, we'll start over here, Ray.
Like reserve time when under 5.
Under the tennis courts, okay? So that's the new A. Okay,
I would
and,
like to reserve time to speak under A.
okay. And did I see Caitlin? Yeah,
I would like to reserve time for the tennis courts as well.
okay.
Jason.
So Ann and Ray Olds and Caitlin Rich. Is there anybody else that would like to reserve time? Okay, public comment is limited to 4 minutes per person, and you can just go to the podium, give your name and address if you would like to speak during public comment. Is there anybody that would like to speak right now? Seeing none, how about on Zoom World? Doesn't look like it.
One person out there.
Oh,
Cheryl Sarvello.
Cheryl Sarvello, or would you like to speak? If you would, please raise your hand. If you would like to speak during public comment, or if you would like to reserve time to speak. Use the raise your hand feature. And we can come back to you also if we see a hand go up during. Okay, last call for any public comment. Hearing none, moving on to our items of business, and we're going to be taking up the Michigan Natural Resource Trust Fund grant application for the tennis courts, and we will go with our first one to reserve, and that would be Ray Olds, and then Ann, and then Caitlin.
I'm Raymond Olds, I live at 11659 9th Street in Ishpeming. I'm here to support new tennis courts. My granddaughter played on the tennis team last year, and they did win the UP state championship. And nobody will play on our tennis courts. They couldn't even practice hardly on our tennis courts. They're in such bad shape. I did turn in some pictures to the council. I don't know if you've seen them. There were weeds over 2 feet tall, cracks over an inch wide. Most schools will not play on our tennis courts. I believe there's one school that will because they don't have tennis courts. They are deemed dangerous because of the moss and the cracks and the tripping hazards. We did have, to my knowledge, one meet there, and that was because of one of our citizens went over and did some private patching on the tennis courts. And also, I don't know if you know this, it's kind of really not well known, and I don't know if I'm going to get all my facts and figures correct, but it was about 2 or 3 years ago, Ishpeming sent a senior tennis league into the Olympics in Florida, and they took 8th place in the nation. And they cannot practice on our own tennis courts. They had to practice in Nagani and in different tennis courts. So I do think tennis courts are very important right now. And another thing I'd like to bring up is pickleball. 2 pickleball courts will go on 1 tennis court. Pickleball is now the fastest growing sport in the nation, and we have no place to play. We have pickleball teams in Ishpeming that have to go to Nagani and reserve courts. It would be nice to have a couple of our tennis courts with pickleball lines on them also. I guess that's about all I wanted to say, is that I do think we have beautiful gyms, we have a beautiful football field, we have a beautiful track, and we have a tennis court that is deemed unsafe. And I think we have to do something about that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ann?
Hi, I'm Ann Olds, 1165 9th Street here in town. I'm also here to support the tennis courts. We had 2 daughters who were on the tennis team probably 20 years ago, and those courts were absolutely beautiful. And now our granddaughter plays, and you can't play on them. The one meet that they had in Ishpeming, there were 2 of the tennis courts that were deemed so unsafe that no one would even use them. And so we had to wait our turn to use some of the courts that were available. And as Raymond mentioned, our girls' tennis team took first in the UP finals, and I think that's huge. I would like to see them play on safe courts, and I would like to see some better courts down there and some well-maintained courts. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Okay, Caitlin.
I'm Caitlin Rich, 784 Mather Avenue here in Ishpeming. I am the boys and girls varsity tennis coach, and my thing every year is I cannot believe that we don't have more serious injuries on these courts than we've had. I've had a lot of sprained ankles, I've had a couple broken toes, we've had road rash. So the safety is always a big concern. When teams come to town, we can't even hold like a full meet because there's only 7 tennis courts there right now. And we can only really play on 6, and dependent on the dirt that accumulates there, sometimes we can only play on 5. And to host meets, it is honestly embarrassing. The kids are embarrassed. Last year, we had a team come to town and laughing, I can't believe we're playing here. And the boys even were kind of taken aback, and you could see that they were like, you know what, this really is embarrassing. And I will tell you that I had a list of kids ready to come tonight, and they're all on a bus on their way to Lansing. These kids in this community, I see them every single day, and the group of seniors that we have this year especially, they are just amazingly talented, dedicated, kind humans, and I wish that we could have done this years ago for them, but they're so passionate about it, they don't care. They want the next group coming up to have nice, safe courts to play on. I did go to our Ishpeming School Board meeting on Monday where we talked about it and we looked at the plans. And I know there are a couple floating out there right now. And I know it's between like 7 and 8 courts. And I know that that is costly to add that 8th court. But if we're gonna do this, we should do it right for these kids. And, you know, it's not just our kids in our school. This is a community sport. This is a sport, you know, me and my dad can go play together. And it's something that they have forever. And to just put 7 courts on there, it does not help our school at all. Thinking ahead, you know, we're a UP championship team, boys and girls. And I know our school district is more than willing to host UP finals at Ishpeming if we had the courts. And, you know, that brings in business to our community. So I know maybe up front, it's a little bit more money to put that 8th court on there. But I think maybe over time, you know, I would definitely be willing to host UPs. I would love to have that here. And I think that draws business and, you know, maybe overall can put some money, revenue back into the community. And like I said, it's really hard with 7, right now, is that my time?
If you can wrap it up. quick.
Okay. The 8 courts is so needed, so necessary, and I beg you to go forward with 8 courts.
Okay, thanks, Caitlin.
Timothy Harris, 1040 Wabash Street, Ishpeming. Like I said, I've grown up here and lived here my whole life. And if you guys get time in that, I'd like you to look at Coach Tom Russo's on his Facebook page today and what he explained about the city of Negaunee, the infrastructure and building new things for our youth. And like I said, my compliments to Bill last year. It's the first time in a long time that we made really good progress down at the playgrounds. But for our tennis courts, they've been in the same disarray for the last at least 20 years, 30, 40, 50 years. But we used to always use the tennis courts. And what we've been finding out now is our youth that are in high school are driving up to West Ishpeming in the township and using those tennis courts. Because we only have 2 tennis courts that are really good over by Berkshire, but those were just resurfaced. So those weren't like, it was just a cosmetic makeover, and them are starting to get bad. So I know there's 2 options there, option 1 and option 2. And the option 2 with the 8 tennis courts would work out really good for our community, because we want to keep our youth out of trouble, and they love tennis, and a lot of the youth now are starting to play pickleball. So I think it's advantageous for the city of Ishpeming to partner with us, Ishpeming High School, and secure this grant and move forward. It'll be a beautiful thing for everybody. And at the end of the day, all you board members, council members, you'll have a glowing heart at the end of the day. You'll make everybody happy. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. Is there anybody else that would like to speak right now? I will let that go. Okay, no?
Line update from the school, Harvey?
I think that would be really good. Yeah, Carrie, please. That would be excellent.
Carrie Meyer, Superintendent at the Ishpeming Public School District. I'm not going to talk to you about
why this is important, because I think all of you, along with all my board members, have been receiving comments and calls from community members for years. So we are all pretty much on the same page. What I will vouch for is my board's commitment. My board could see the need for these for the last few years, so we've appropriately budgeted. We know there was a need. We're not asking the city to pay for new courts. We're willing to contribute. And we've been waiting for another grant opportunity. A few years back, I worked with the city. We applied for 3 different years in a row, and we missed it by just a hair. I know that the city had a couple other DNR grant applications in the last couple of years, and we're not able to apply, so this is the timing is right for us to move forward again. And at this point, the DNR's match is $400,000. That's larger than it's been in the past, and so this is a perfect opportunity for us to possibly, if we can get approved, have $400,000 not out of your pocket or our pocket to put towards these courts. So this is the right time. At our meeting last night, our community expressed, and our board members expressed the need for 8 courts versus 7 courts, because they understand the benefit of not just our students, it's the community that's crying for this. The ability to have playoffs brings other schools, other communities into our community, spending money at your local businesses, at our local businesses. It's going to benefit all of us as a community. Therefore, the motion at our Monday meeting is they are willing to spend up to $300,000, hoping that the city not necessarily will match it, but they'll help with a good chunk towards 8 courts. So leave it up to you guys on what you would choose to approve tonight, but keep in mind that our board, the school board, is willing to invest, and they're committed.
Thank you, Carrie. Okay, moving on then to the, our portion of this. So we've heard from public input on this. And I know we have some letters of support. People can still write letters of support as well. But I will now turn this over to the city manager to tell us what's next.
So February 14th, the council decided to support the tennis courts with a match of $150,000. And the first requirement, the reason we're here, is that there's a requirement by the grant to have a public input session. We have to have this or the grant can't go forward. We have the school board had done one, and now us. That's going to show that we've met that twice. But what I also did is I provided in your packet, based on what the superintendent had worked out at her board on Monday, trying to match to where our math is as it relates to our capital investment plan. Our capital investment plan is posted annually, but it's a 5-year plan. So as soon as we complete a budget, it starts looking for the next year's plan. And so what we had in our SIP for the playgrounds was $250,000, which would be enough and sufficient, except we also were not expecting to not receive the community grant. We were really holding on for this Michigan Community Center grant. We been notified that we received $300,000 from the Michigan Community Center grant, and that's $300,000 out of a $1.4 million ask, so it did not cover all things that we asked for. I made a call to the state and asked for some consideration of some other stuff, and I'm assured there's a commitment to give us an additional $100,000, but it has to go through some state wickets before it actually shows up officially. But I'm assured by the director of the program that it's there and it's ours. It's just got to get through the wickets. I'm also assured that the community center grant allows us to work within the grant. So long as we applied for both a program and a capital grant, we can mix and match our grant dollars, and we did. So we are able to make some arrangements. So when we made a decision to support a financial commitment to a skate park on the February 14th, and the commitment to the tennis courts on February 14th, we committed to $300,000 against our SIP, which had $250,000. The community center grant allows us to move $50,000 from that 300,000 to capital, which puts $50,000 back into our capital investment plan, which makes sure that we have $100,000 for the skate park and $150,000 for the tennis courts. The way the trust fund works is there's a whole bunches of categories of scoring, and within that categories of scoring, a match of 50% or more maxes out your grant points for that scoring area. And so if we have $200,000 from the city and the school's got 200,000 or more, then we would have the 50% against the 400,000, which maxes out that category. So at 150, if the school's only able to match our 150, we would be short of the 50%, and we would be short of full score. So I support looking at what we can do within our capital investment planning to see if we can carve out an additional $50,000. Talking to the school superintendent, we were throwing out all kinds of different ideas of whether it could be a cash match or an in-kind match, so there's potential for both. I think it's much easier, much cleaner when it's a cash match because you don't have to try to maintain records and figure out what days you're carving out, and you don't mess scheduling up with a contractor that's gonna do work. But both are possible. I think we can get there. I've provided you with the list of the capital investments that were listed for 2025. And so there's some opportunities to look at what's on that list and decide whether or not you want to change that list. You would be trying to change that list to achieve a $50,000 push back to putting it towards the playgrounds. My recommendation is I think out of the things that are listed in the top three, we have the playground rec plan updates, which includes the tennis courts and the skate park. We have a dog park in there. We have some ice rink improvements and an amphitheater. I would recommend that the amphitheater is probably not a bad choice to realign those funds in 2025 and look at putting an amphitheater in later.
Does this have to come out of 2025, not out of like anything we're doing in 2024?
The grant notification of preliminary scoring happens in August. We have a chance to argue our score up if we feel like there's points that were missed. And then I think the final award of grants comes out somewhere in October, November. And so you would not be executing it in 2024. So you would be definitely looking at 2025 funding. So I mean, does that mean you couldn't not do something in 2024 and have that money available in 2025? No, it doesn't mean that. I just think that as we look at what we've been working to schedule, it's looking at the 2025 is the more appropriate year, and I think that amphitheater would be my recommendation as the easiest space to save. There's $60,000-ish on the table there that would absolutely meet that criteria.
What about, I'm looking at the dog park. I've been in lots of discussions about the dog park, but not recently, and we tend to revisit that at the Parks and Rec meeting, and it's fairly well stalled out and has been so far as I know anything about it.
Yeah, I
Is there
haven't heard
something
anyone
else
else.
that I don't know about, or, I mean, I certainly think that it's a worthwhile thing, and I'd like to see it happen, but I also know that it's currently, as far as I know, unless there's something you know that I don't.
I think we would use an amphitheater more so than a dog park
I just have a
too.
quick question. So at our meeting on February 14th, we left there allocating $150,000 to this project, $150,000 to the skate park project. The skate park project ended up, we got more funding than we were thinking, correct?
We got funding,
Which
yes,
freed up $50,000.
correct.
So in my mind, if we go with the 150 that we already had, in addition to that 50,000, we didn't go through any plans to see what we were cutting at the February 14th meeting. So is that something that needs to be done right here, right now?
Nope, it doesn't. It's thrown out there as consideration. What we're doing is we're committing to the grant application and saying that within our application that we are committing to a dollar match.
Okay.
And if we receive the grant, then we would support that with that dollar amount. This is a shell for us to then base our 2025 budget off of, and you can absolutely have all the discussions about what goes into that 2025 budget, which is not done.
So then, just to be clear, leaving here today, if we would, hypothetically speaking, if we agreed on a $200,000 contribution to the tennis court grant, we would be walking out of here just as we did on February 14th, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then one more question. So I don't see the plans included in here. Those are not in the packet, or am I just missing?
So that is true. The plans are not in there. So there's 3 different versions of the plans. The city has not made any argument for the number of courts. We're letting the school district suggest which plan is the best. What we have is 3 plans where they basically are all focused on 8 courts, where they shift alignment, where one set has them all in one flat row, and that's the most expensive adjustment. And then they have 5 and 3 and a 6 and 2 configuration. And so they're all 8 courts. The reality is if we get the grant funding, our goal is to execute the full entirety of our commitment and the grant funding so we don't lose any. The bids wouldn't come until winter into spring and then spring construction. So if the bids come in and we only get 5 courts because that's what 800,000 buys us, we would get 5 courts. If we got 8 courts, we get 8 courts. So we're just committing to the funding and getting the documents to show that we have a plan and that we're working towards a plan. The configuration can change all the way up until the date that we get a bid and we execute, because that bid might come in low enough that we could say, hey, we'd rather do the one straight row, and it comes in at the $800,000, we can execute that, what we thought was more expensive. And so the configuration is a conceptual design until bid is on the table and defined, and we can still modify that all the way up till construction date.
My-
Jim just went out, I
Yeah,
think
go
it
ahead.
would be helpful to know. I happen to see the drawings because of my job.
Yes.
So I ran my job duties. And the one, so in order to go with the 8 courts, which has been requested by the community
Yes, it
school
has.
district, that estimate for that drawing, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, right, even though I don't have it in front of me, it was about $860,000 total for the project, was that estimate.
The least expensive of the 3 8-court drawings was $860 and some change, yes.
So just, I think that's helpful in making a decision of how much money we wanna contribute. I mean, I think that's what we're looking at, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
That's our target.
My biggest question on that though too is are we able to be a little more flexible with what we're possibly going to provide to the school district? I think $200,000 should be where we're at, like with our minimum match. At least that's my thoughts. But if we are able to come up with an additional $50,000 to help them get to that 8-court plan, we may be able to pull something like the dog park off right now and still have extra money to contribute to help them get to the 8-court plan. I think that's, I guess, where I'm going with this.
So I was going to suggest that, to Councilmember Furby's point, that we don't necessarily need to decide what we're going to swap around. It's the same as the February meeting, right? We committed to those 2 matches of $150,000 each, which is $300 total. And we had a lot of discussion around the fact that if we were to get both of them, we may have to make a decision about, and we may have to make some difficult decisions if we wound up with both of them, because that was a lot of money. And then we may have to come in and decide what we were going to do.
Right.
And then we talked about, well, maybe if we only got one, it would be a little easier. And we've kind of been able to move the skate park out of that discussion somewhat. And so to Mayor Chapman's point, if we were to look at maybe 250,000, we would still be relatively in the same boat that we were
Right.
previously, and then able to support the tennis courts at a higher dollar amount.
Yeah.
Is there any, am I missing something, or is that,
Those are all true statements.
okay,
Perfect.
okay, all right. And then what would our total be? So the grant would be 400,000. Did the school say three?
So,
The 300.
yeah, so assume initially that there's a 50-50 match with us and the school district. The other component of what the superintendent suggested is that if we fell short, so if that 860 mark is what is the required mark, they would commit to making sure that we had 860,000 total between the grant funds and the matches between the city and the school district. Not to exceed $300,000, exactly.
Is the school able to fundraise as well, from private donors? For any over
May I, Carrie?
expenditures?
Carrie answered that yesterday, and I let her answer, but I think the city would have opportunity to maybe rally some community support and do something, but let Carrie speak for the school district.
Yeah, Carrie.
So my position as a superintendent, I do not reach out and fundraise myself. What I do is I present sinking fund millages, I present bond millages. Yes, we have groups of people who are going on a class trip or downstate for a game, or you name it. They individually, a lot of the kids do some fundraising. But I don't feel me as a superintendent, after we collect all this tax money, need to put our hands out again. Our community is so over generous, and we're very grateful for that. And we do not like to put our hand out for any extra money that we have to as administrators. So I believe it's my job to budget appropriately, not do crowdfunding, and make sure that I have my bond money or my sinking fund money or my general fund money, and I budget appropriately for these projects. So I myself will not go and ask the community to give us even more money after they just passed the sinking fund. That's my feelings as an administrator of the district, but that's not saying somebody else can't. And so I did want to mention too, as long as I'm up here, when you talk about the submission for the grant, I think Craig is correct at saying that, yes, if we could each commit 200,000 to have the 50% match to the 400,000, that's how we would go forward and write the grant.
Okay.
Now, above and beyond that, my board has committed to another 100,000 if needed, and if the city's willing to do that, for any extra money it may take, because bidding these out isn't until next year, it could be a little bit more, and/or we are really committed on the 8 courts. So my board is committed to spend a little extra money beyond the grant, but I think it's important to know that for the grant application, it's important that we have 200 to match the 400, and then if we both have a little bit in our back pocket to help with any money over, that would be very much appreciated.
Thank you, and I think that's exactly at least how I feel, is we should have that extra money to support if need be as a community, because this will benefit more than just the students there. This is going to benefit, people wanting to go and play with their dads, like you guys said, so.
Well, I would make a motion.
I just want to clarify one thing. So when I'm Chris Holmes, UP Engineers and Architects.
Chris, go ahead.
With these numbers, though, I just want to clarify, the minimum for an 8-court right now is 860,000. So you're going to have to go in at 860. So you can't go in at 200 and 200 to get 800.
Right.
You need to be at 860. So whatever that looks like, if the council wants to match 50-50, it's 230, whatever it is, at the end of the day, when Craig hits submit, it's going to be 860, because that's what our lowest estimate is right now. So just to clarify that, it's not 200. It could be 200, 260, or whatever, but you're going to have to go in at 860 at a minimum. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Crowdfunding or rally support?
So the question, I don't know if they heard that question. The question is, can the city support crowdfunding if the community got behind it? The answer is yes. There are opportunities. I'm not contradicting what Carrie said. I agree with Carrie. Like, if we go in with as much as we are, does the community need to give more? It's their taxpayer dollars that are being committed, but But if a community organization felt strongly, or if, we went to a community foundation or the Rotary Club or some other organization that wanted to contribute, we can absolutely support and collect and put monies towards a fund that would be held for this project and be used for this project within legal limits. So that is possible. It's not anywhere in our mind right now. We're just trying to get the grant in on time with the right dollar amount to be competitive, so.
I just
So
wanna
as the chair holds
Yeah.
mentioned though, even if there were crowdfunding, we would have to commit to a certain amount to pay
Yes.
because this grant application to do the first vehicle.
understood. I just
So
wanna
I-
make sure we can,
So I think we should, I guess the question is, in order to get the 400,000, we're not gonna get anything above 400,000, right? Is that
The trust fund will not give us more than 400,000. That's the max
Okay.
grant award.
Okay.
The trust fund also wants to see what your project estimate is, and that you have the funding committed in a way that your funding plus the grant award, if awarded, is fully funded. It's not got gaps.
Okay.
That was what
So,
Mr.
okay.
Holmes was suggesting.
So then I would make a motion that we essentially match the school's funding and we commit to the $200,000 for the match for the grant, and then with an additional up to an additional $100,000 to cover the cost, which then combined would give us $1 million.
I would support
Which would
that.
be theoretically 160 over the low estimate at the moment.
I support that, absolutely.
And so I don't know if that's where we're committing the entire 300,000, and however you want to write that in the grant.
I would say that we write it the same way or similar to what the school board did, which is that the city council, in our agreement with the Ishpeming School District, Public School District, is that we will match the funds necessary up to 300,000. Let us finalize and refine those numbers to get them like as close to accurate as we can and submit that grant application. So when Chris says, yep, these are my numbers, it's 860,000 and change, or if it's 885, whatever that number is, we just split those commitments between the school district in the system so that we show the full commitment for the project, and then that goes in as the grant application. When we get the bids, if it comes down to 700,000,
Yeah.
we're all even better
Right.
off than we
Yeah.
were if it goes up, as long as we go
got the
to
clearance
300, you're
levels,
capped,
Cap would be
capped at 300.
Yeah, and so the reason for that is knowing that that's what we had originally committed in February for the total of 2 projects. Now we're looking at 1 project, and when we're looking at what we have slated for 2025, I think we can make some adjustments there if necessary, if we're awarded the grant, and, to make sure that there's room for it.
Sorry, I just want to make sure I heard you correctly, because I don't want to contradict, but there are still 2 projects you're supporting. You just supporting $50,000 less on the skate park than you had already done. So there's 2 projects. You're still committed to 100,000 on the skate park, not 150,
I
because
thought
we
we're
saved 50.
making those decisions.
Okay.
On,
In your grant applications, you have.
okay.
In your budget, you're gonna have to decide officially where it comes from if we get the grant agreements. I'm telling you right now that the Michigan Community Center grant is, we have $100,000 coming in addition to the 300. 250 of that is going to programming, and 50 is being carved out to match with the other 100 for capital, which then gives us 100 from the city, 100 from the DDA. What their meeting is tomorrow, we're anticipating that they're supporting that decision. We're not, I can't commit, but I'm anticipating that. That makes 200 plus 150 from the Michigan Community Grant, gives us 350 for the skate park. And that's within that project scope right now, because we have firm fixed pricing that we're working there. So,
Okay, well, I stick
And we
with
can
my,
increase that.
Final question, do we have to make the motion say to split that in the resolution?
yes, the resolution will have to be modified to, yes.
Okay.
Does that need to be part of the motion?
You would have to direct us to put that number into the resolution, yes.
Are you seconding and
I'm
amending?
I'm still
Okay.
supporting it, yeah,
Okay.
I'm still supporting it.
The motion's to not exceed 300,000.
Yes.
Correct,
Yes.
correct.
Yes.
And I'm still on board with that. Yeah. And support. Okay, so you have the motion the way you need it, Caroline, you're okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. And I would be remiss if I didn't say something to all of those who came to support this. You guys have been the driving force behind this, and, we've been pushed as a council, and we've heard, so thank you.
If you do want to submit a letter of support, please submit it to City Hall within the next 5 days. I have to get this in the application, so. You can direct it to me, just a letter of support. You can say to the trust fund grant committee, you can say to the city manager, whatever, just so you're writing a letter that supports your stance, we'll add it to our packet.
Perfect.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
No problem. All righty. So we're done then on,
So you're on
use and
A3.
maintenance. Okay, all right. Moving on, Craig, use and.
So the use and maintenance agreement is a portion of this packet as well. As Carrie indicated, there's been multiple rounds of applications. You've had a use and maintenance grant agreement document. Every time we've submitted it, Carrie and I have revised it based on this grant submission. And I would say pending the attorney's review, because we were still doing this on Monday, but her board has looked at it and agreed to it. I don't think there's anything that's surprising. It's the same one with some, we changed it from one name project to a new name project for the year that we're in. But on review from the attorney, I think it's a simple add-in. We can still modify that all the way up to the point that the tennis courts would be constructed. And just say we make them administrative change, so it's not gonna bust anything. It keeps the maintenance in a shared capacity where the school is already doing most maintenance most days. We do road maintenance and utility work and things, and then if something breaks, we share those costs on a break. But sweeping and putting toilet paper out and nets and those kind of things are part of the school's maintenance, and they have a budget for that as well, so.
Yeah, I make a motion that we accept the use and maintenance agreement with Ishpeming Public Schools as presented.
Support.
Second.
We have motion and support. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, we are now moving on then to discuss cost estimates and public improvement funding for area south of Division Street. But we also have in there some other things, do we not?
So this is the portion that you asked us at the last meeting come back, which includes the test wells and the topo evaluation. Topo meaning topographical, sorry, that's just a term I'm used to saying a lot. But basically, we have Chris Holmes here from UPEA if you have specific questions, but the last council meeting, you asked us to go out, get the cost estimate, and then show you the budget and then help you to decide what budget impacts might be in order to execute that. And so UPEA has come in with their numbers, and the monitoring wells for installation on public utility right-of-ways or public lands, not in private property, came out to around 5,000, right? It could be less, could be more. We didn't go bid this out yet. We've given the general estimates of what it would look like. And then the survey is gonna be somewhere in that same neighborhood of 5,000. And then we were trying to figure out what it is gonna be for watching the rise and fall. If you have a dry year, it's gonna be less. If you get a fluctuation of heavy rainstorms, you can get out there and monitor over time every time it rains. But just giving a rough estimate of about $2,000 to $3,000 for monitoring those fluctuations puts us in that just under 15,000 that you would have to analyze against your 24 budget and decide where that money would come
My,
from.
and my question is on these new capital improvements proposed for 2024. We have that sheet, where we've got all of these different things in here, and this is also marked A. Are we deciding on these things too?
You don't have to decide that today, but,
I think
but
I'd
you
like
have
to-
to, at some point, make a budget amendment that suggests the change. You asked us to give you some things to look at and consider for that.
I would be fine making some changes to this too, and I guess, I mean, it's in our packets, we have had to look
Okay,
at
I
that.
want to know where are we thinking about taking this from? That would be, I guess, you, Grant?
Yep. So we have the 2024 list that is right now. Sorry. We have the 2024 capital improvement recommendations that were part of the 2024 budget that we passed in the packet with us. There are some easy buttons to hit, I guess. One of the recommendations that I had would be to remove some of the additional roadway repair funding and divert that into the storm sewer system for that neighborhood. That might be the easiest. Otherwise, it's really up for council's discussion. The only reason I point out the roadway funding is because there's nothing specific provided, or we don't have specific plans for the additional roadway funding yet. So it's just.
And it has to come out of the public improvement fund.
Yes, I don't think because storm sewer is not related to metered sale or usage of water, that we should keep it out of public improvement, not the.
Can we make some
So the
additional?
roadway improvement, we would just be removing the $15,000.
Yes, because we don't have any specific roadway projects
Okay.
yet earmarked for that.
Okay, so that would just bring us down from the 300,000.
To a $250,000. Yep, that would be the easy button in my mind.
Yep.
Okay, and then can we make another change to this also on here?
Sorry.
Well, Renell and I were kind of, Councilmember
We'll get
Halverson
through
and I were.
this funding for this.
Yeah, and then we'll
make the
take,
deci-
we'll
we
take
wanna
this up
our
also
time.
then? Okay, all right, perfect.
So that would be, my motion would be to take that from the 300,000 from that, because like you said, if we don't have anything directly
Right.
earmarked for that, I mean, I by no means want to sap that
Right.
fund dry, because there's stuff that we are gonna need.
And we might be able
I
to
do
take-
think, if I may.
Can we take
it
some
might
out of
be-
the water fund?
What's that?
Can we take some out of the water fund for the water monitoring?
No, unfortunately, because the water and sewer funds are both enterprise funds, so they're driven by metered sales. So they're run like a separate business. But I did just want to point out, I think it'd be beneficial to just, again, point out this proposed 2024 project list, and Mr. Scanlon did a good job when we went over this initially of pointing this out. This is all just kind of starting points for council discussion for 2024, and none of these projects, I think, are set in stone at all. So if you guys had any revisions or changes.
I think we're ready to make one tonight, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's just something that I think could be done in an email. I don't even know that a motion would be needed, because these are just a recommended project
I
list
think
to
it's
consider.
gonna need one.
Okay.
Well, I think you need a motion for the monitoring wells.
think she's already made it.
But for the recommendations on.
She's already
for
made it, yeah.
Discussion and dialogue on other
Right.
items.
Yeah.
that's a
Right,
different
right.
conversation. Yes.
We're just deciding where this is, where there's money to be
Yeah.
unfortunately pilfered.
And I'll
That,
support Renell's motion of this.
right, so my motion would be to remove that $15,000 from the repair problem sections here. That would be the,
Okay.
let's see, yeah, repair problem sections at roadways, whatever, we've got that.
All right, Renell still support that?
And then do we need to have a resolution for changing of our budgets? Because every time we make any kind of change, if we need that resolution, I want to have it
Well, so
before
you'll
the
get
end
a-
of the year.
You'll get a budget amendment following this.
Okay.
Because you made the decision tonight, we'll reallocate this money,
Okay.
we'll start planning for, and then when we execute that and it causes change,
Okay.
right, you made a decision and recommendation to do it.
Okay.
When we do the work and we cause change to the budget, then you get a budget amendment that
Okay.
follows for that.
Well, yeah,
Yeah, but you do get that.
okay, perfect.
All right, so, okay. Motion and support, is there further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. So I would like to make a motion to change one of the capital improvements for the proposed 2024 budget, and my motion would be to
I'm not sure you can take that up because it's not on the agenda.
well,
It's
it was included in this, though.
That's not an agenda item.
The agenda item was to figure out where we're allocating these funds for this
And then-
specific project on a special. You could put it onto the agenda for next month.
You want to put it on for
April.
next one? Then I'm going to make a
We just add that.
motion to request it on the April council meeting
Right, that
agenda,
would
that we
be-
bring up the discussion of replacing on here.
Right,
The
the new truck
200
and the new sidewalk plow. We want those
I want
on
to, yeah, we're
on the
going to,
agenda.
we want to take off the new sidewalk plow and the new truck out of the motor pool.
So if I may, I don't think you need a motion. What we'll do is we'll put an agenda item to discuss the capital investment strategy
Okay.
for the public improvement fund.
Perfect.
As a discussion topic
It's
for
not
next
public
month's
improvement,
meeting.
it's going to be out of the motor pool because we're going to, yeah, we have a
But the
different
capital
replacement.
improvement program,
Okay.
SIP,
All
we'll
right.
put for discussion of that.
Do you want the item that we were looking at replacing on?
No, we're gonna bring the whole thing for you guys to discuss, and you can talk about any of it
Okay.
you want.
All right,
Okay, perfect.
perfect.
If I may, we skipped item 5B.
No, well, it was all related to A, so, because it was, this was A also.
No,
on our thing.
that's for the property transfer that we skipped over.
Yeah, we skipped B. We went to the new C and we skipped B.
You know, for the,
No,
We were still on A.
just finished B.
Oh,
That we were just finishing B, which is the discussion of the public improvement fund for the Division Street monitoring wells.
Yeah. This was all 5A right here, but it got changed because we took C and put it in front, so we were still all on A.
oh, gotcha. Yeah, you lost me on that one
Yeah,
too.
we just went A, B.
No,
C.
you lost me on that one too.
It's the agenda items that
I'm
are
like,
A, so,
it seems like we just skipped over it.
yeah.
Sorry.
Nope, that's
All right, now we are on to then the public hearing for the proposed transfer of 429 East New York Street to the Market County Land Bank. One of the things that I want to bring up is that we got a letter from a resident that they had put in this, that they requested to purchase this land prior to the land bank, and we do need to do that in the public hearing?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, that would be good.
all right. I didn't know if that had to be brought for first.
That is
or
the
not.
public.
Okay. All right, then I will open up the public hearing at 5:24 PM. And I want to just then, does that need a motion, Kathy? No, okay. So then we got a letter from a resident that they stated that they had tried to purchase this plot of land prior, and it's from Larry and Valerie Kootman, that they had wanted to purchase this land as it was adjacent to the property next door, and that they were denied for the reasonings of, that we were putting up a new road to the,
Yeah, Jason, why don't you just go ahead and read it as a public
Yeah, I'll
comment?
read it.
Read their letter.
okay.
That
this-
way it's their words.
Yeah, this was sent to Councilmember Scanlon. Because we are out of town on vacation, we, Larry and Valerie Potman, are unable to attend the special meeting regarding the sale of the property at 429 East New York Street, Lot 4, Assessor's Plat of East New York Street, in parentheses. We own the property adjacent at 427 East New York Street. We approached the previous city manager a few years ago about purchasing the property at 429 East New York Street and were subsequently told that it was not for sale as the city had plans to put a new road up to the water tank. Obviously, that has not happened, and now you want to sell the property to the land bank. Exactly how much money is the land bank paying for the property? As adjacent property owners, we feel we should have first opportunity to purchase the property, as we have heard has been practice in the past for vacant lots, or at the very least, it should go up for bids. As I mentioned, when we spoke by phone, our son is currently residing in the home at 427 East New York Street. We are interested in the property for two reasons. While the current septic system is fine, our concern is that down the road, if we needed to put in a new system, we may not have enough room to do so, and would like to own the property adjacent if that time comes. We also have talked about building a small retirement home that is a single story, and that this property would be ideal for that need. I would add that this area where I grew up is where, I would add that this is the area where I grew up and does hold sentimental value to me. We respectfully ask that you share this information with the city council and manager at the special meeting on Wednesday, March 20th. If anyone has any questions that needs to contact, please call me, Larry. We look forward to hearing back as to what transpires at the meeting. Respectfully, Larry and Valley Potnin. It would be my belief that, yes, they should get the first right of refusal on this land, or, yeah.
You're just taking public comment. That was
Okay.
your public comment.
So this was the public comment.
That's a
So
public
then what are we
comment.
supposed to do?
You read it on their
about this?
behalf as a public comment, and then now you have to see if there's any other public comments regarding.
Okay, is there any other public comments regarding this piece?
Yes, hello, this is Antonio Don. I am an employee of the Marquette County Land Bank, and the Land Bank has expressed interest in a prior meeting as well, and actually getting that land back in order to build workforce housing. So I'm here to answer any questions. I know that there's been some emails with information as to how much investment has gone into this to prep it for development. So I'm here to answer questions that you may have, so.
Okay, none at this time. Anyone else like to speak? Mr. Tonkin, go ahead, please.
Can you hear me from here?
Please go there, yeah. It's our policy.
Yeah, the old timer break. Just a comment. I know the Potnin family for so many years, okay? And very good people. They've been in the location for years. The whole family lives in that location. According to the charter, we are supposed to put that property up for sale, according to the charter. And it's supposed to go to the highest bidder. So let's, for a change, start following what the charter tells us what to do and follow it correctly, instead of side shifting things. And let's go back door and, yeah, here's a deal for you. Because these people are good and solid. They've been in this location. They're hardworking people, and what they tell you what they're going to do is what they do. And that's about all I can say. Let your conscience ride on that.
Okay, thank you. Yes. We had another comment.
Hello, Meredith Sepinen, 619 North 6th Street, Ishpeming. We have a real need for workforce housing. Where, though? Where are we going to put it? Well, we got to put it somewhere. I think it's a beautiful area, a little far from public transportation, in my opinion, currently, but I think it's a great location. It has to go somewhere. I hope that the due process that for this swap goes through, but I'm for more housing in Ishpeming, definitely, especially workforce housing. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And and we're not there yet.
Yeah.
But the idea that the city is required to take bids or sale, that is not in the charter, and that is not a requirement. The city is required to consider the best, essentially realizing the best public value when it disposes of assets.
Okay.
And that would be one way of doing it, that is an accepted method.
Well, let's get out of the.
All right, well, is there anybody else from the public that would like to say anything? Okay, closing the public hearing at 5:31 PM. What is the, go ahead, Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem Purvey.
So I recall this coming up a while back.
Mhm.
And Caroline, I guess I just need some clarification, because I thought what it said in the charter was that property needed to be declared surplus.
That was done at the last meeting.
Okay, and then after that, there is no language about how it has to be sold, things taken, that never made it.
So there's two things. There's the charter and then there's state law. And so the charter needs to be consistent with state law. Neither the charter nor state law require bids, auctions, or sales like that. But if the city is disposing of assets, then the city is required to realize the best value for the city. And that could be monetary value, or it could be addressing needs. So the first question answered at the last meeting is, does the city itself need the property, say for future planning or whatever? And the decision was no, the city does not need it. So then the second step is to take public input, which you're doing today. You're not making any decisions today. Then the next meeting is when you can make decisions, and it's my understanding that the land bank will be making a request or providing some information, what have you. And there's some issues raised in an email that was sent that you may wish to consider. And those just aren't up for today. I don't think there's any prohibition on discussing it, but you wouldn't make the decision until the April regular meeting. What you're required to do under the charter when you dispose of the property, and this is section 14.6C, is you would vote as to how to dispose of the property if you wish to do so at that point. You are not required to do it just because it's a third meeting, but if you decide to do it, and at that point you might decide that you can put it up for auction, list it with the realtor, make a decision that development of workforce housing is a value and you want to get it out there, get that housing built and bring it back and get a house put on the tax rolls. I hear there's also a suggestion that the land bank makes agreements, development agreements sometimes if they sell a lot to a neighbor. There's all kinds of options and those are things you should consider and vote on at the next meeting or after.
So in my mind, which might not be right, admittedly, I feel like, so that's what we just did. We just had our public hearing and any interested parties could step forward at this point in time and put in a bid or do whatever it is that they feel appropriate, right? So to be clear, we have not received a bid from anyone at this point. We have had people show interest in the property and that is all.
And
We did reps this,
you have
okay.
not said you're accepting bids on the property.
Right.
You
But
have,
like if a person said, I'm interested in it and I will pay you X, I wanna put in a bid for X amount of dollars, do we say, okay, we'll consider it, or do we say, no, we have to open it up?
yeah, I think you need to, at the next meeting, you need to decide on what process you're going to use to sell. Are you gonna do bids of some kind? If so, how are you going to do it? Are you going to choose a different path? There are a lot of options, but you need to discuss that method at the next. And if you're gonna open it up for bids, then you'd have to establish a timeline and who's gonna do it, or you just gonna list it with a realtor, one of the easiest ways to open up for bids, that kind of thing, in April.
So these people could be available in April and be considered in this whole process then? I mean, we wouldn't be shutting them out at this meeting.
So correct, you're taking their public comment during a public hearing about whether or not you should declare this land surplus and consider for sale. That's today's role. They have had their input, because they emailed it to a council member, it was read aloud, and they have exercised what they can do today. What you sit through the April meeting and decide is, what's our method going to be for disposal of this lot? And then you might say, hey, by May, get your bid in. Or you might say, hey, we only want to consider X or Y. You're gonna have that 2 weeks from now. Today was just to take the testimony of public about the circumstance of declaring it surplus, which is this second step of a three-step process.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to give them a chance to talk further.
It's mainly to Carolyn. So the land bank tore the house down, so they paid for that, and with the intent of building something there eventually. So then they transferred it to us to build a road, but we decided not to.
So that's not part of it. What today is solely a step 2 of a process to take public testimony on how the public considers the idea of declaring this surplus and considering for a future sale. And the April meeting would be where you can discuss how you want to execute that, should you want to execute that.
So there's really nothing.
There's no action.
No, there's no action we can take, but I think that it should be made known to Mr. and Mrs. Poten that they should probably provide some type of comment, because if they've tried to purchase this once before, I would like to at least see due process take its course on this one, so we,
Well, that's what we're going to figure out.
well, but what I'm stating on that is to give them a chance to maybe be here or on Zoom or something, so, because I have questions for them as well too, so. Okay. Nothing else needed on that, correct?
No action needed.
Agree to discuss.
Agree to discuss, that's probably the best way to put it, yeah. All right, we are now moving on to Delta, Resolution 4-2024, Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, Notice of Intent and Declaring Intent to Reimburse. Craig, and then Renell, did you have a question on this resolution?
Are you talking about, no. I didn't.
Okay. All righty, I thought maybe you did that, okay.
So this resolution is a part of our process to get the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund through the next wicket, which is you have to have a resolution that says that should we be offered a bond package and we get screened, audited, reviewed, and determine our rating through the S&P rating process and determine what it is and whether or not we can or cannot afford that. They won't offer us a bonding if we can afford it within our budget. We are quite confident that's not the case. We're quite confident that we are quite able to do that. And so what we have done is we've identified how the bond can work for the city and up to a number. We did this the same way with the sewer. The current program has a 50% grant with a 50% low interest loan. And that low interest loan is called bond. They're the one and the same. This is the low interest rate loan that goes with the grant. You don't separate them. You can't get the grant without the loan. You can't get the loan without the grant. They're one and the same. You can go through another program and get a loan without a grant, but this is in the state's revolving fund program. These two are married together. And so in order to move this step forward, what we have done is we've identified what we think we want to go as our maximum ceiling if possible. So put it in the idea of how you would possibly look for a mortgage on a home. You want to get pre-approved for a mortgage, and you generally say, hey, lender, pre-approve me for my maximum amount up to, so then I can find. And so what we've put this in as, we have a project that's $20 million, 10 of it is grant, 10 of it is bonding. We added a ceiling up to $15 million on the bonding, so that if what happened with our sewer, the rates came in so high that we lost a portion of our scope. This allows us to have additional bonding at this low interest rate to do more work if we were to need it, and we don't have to execute the full amount. But we do have to, if we use 10 million in grant, we have to have 10 million in bond executed. That's how the program works, 50-50.
And then they come back to
But we gave ourselves a cushion in case we needed more. Lead line service replacement is a mandatory state law, and we find more service lines that need to be replaced. We can use this bonding to help make that execution, so we are in compliance with the state. They're gonna turn around and say, yep, you're good for 15 million. They could say, nope, you're good at 12. Or they could say, you're gonna be able to get the 10. Or they could say you're not eligible. We are quite confident that we can go to this. We have PFM and Miller Canfield that are our agents operating on our behalf who drafted this document, and having had looked at the last few years of audit plus the bonding that we just did plus this, and recommended this 15 million is the right number.
Okay, I guess the bottom line question here is, I think it might be on your mind.
It is.
Is
That's
if we don't get the money this way, then the money has to come from our bond and basically raising the water rates to pay for this, correct? I mean, in exorbitant amounts, whereas this is metered out over 40 years,
Well, we
percentage.
still could have to change it.
So
Pay that back.
So the way bonding works is that it has to have a revenue payback, which is why we always run into stormwater issues. There's not a revenue payback. As a metered service, as a service fund, water rates pay for the loan repayment. And so as part of the process, always, regardless of what method we're using, water rates are to cover our service costs. We have them on a growing scale to cover long-term maintenance as we expect economy and inflation changes. Sometimes you're doing really great and the economy's poor and you don't go far. And then sometimes the economy's poor and you're doing great because you have money in there. This has a fixed, must be able to have the right amount of rate to meet that. We don't know until we get through the final process whether they're gonna say you might have to raise it a penny, not raise it at all, or raise it a percentage, but this determines that.
This is a 40-year.
This is on a 40-year mortgage.
Right.
Yes.
So that money
Is
through
spread.
rates would be metered over that 30 years or whatever at an estimated percentage.
They could
as
still come back
opposed-
and tell us that we have to increase our water rates with
Well,
getting the
it's-
grant and
It's
everything,
going to
yes.
be increased because this has got to be paid for over time. But I guess what I'm saying is, what my understanding of the question that I've received is if we don't do this, okay, and we decide to go private pay, people are gonna see their rates skyrocket.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? If
Yeah.
we're trying to do this without the bond and without the matching loan. So.
Without it,
We
yeah.
don't have the money to
No.
charge $500 a month for the next 10 years to pay this on the backs of the taxpayer.
Yeah, I apologize. I think I might have misunderstood the question.
I
So
did-
the
I
answer
think I
is
may have
yes.
too, but
The
yeah,
answer is
you're
yes.
right.
Without this process,
There.
we lose $10 million of free grant that doubles our capacity, and we're getting this at 1.875% loan spread over 40 years
And that's
as a
what I-
mortgage.
That's what I
And
wanna clarify.
And without
too.
it, we would have a higher rate. Even if we did a USDA bonding process, even the USDA said if you can get the state revolving fund now, get it, because their rates are far better than ours, and they have a higher match requirement than you get with this.
Right,
And
and
so,
I just wanted you to clarify that because I had discussed this with some residents and Jason and I
Yep.
had, so we have clarity as to the really good reason why we're bending towards this bonding.
and right now, I don't know that we're anticipating a rate increase because of this bond. We are confident that our rates have been set and that they are being analyzed quite stringently to see whether there was one or not, whether it is one or not. We don't know yet. I'm not gonna say definitively no, but we're confident that we've been doing the right steps, that this is on glide path to be successful without significant rate.
And are we still gonna look at doing a water study like we've discussed, or a rate study?
You can't do that until all of the meters are turned over to radio reads, and you can see on all of our budgets that we've been doing that, and we've been switching out meters at a rate faster than we ever have
Right,
before.
understood.
And we're being very successful and deliberate about that, but we have to get to that point before we can achieve that step.
I would add that anyone, when we first began talking about this and when we first, whatever it was that we did to pursue this, when we agreed to accept the grant and the loan, we had extensive discussion about that. It may have even been a public hearing, I can't remember, but I do remember that there was extensive discussion around that, and I don't remember what month it was, but since all of our meetings of recent are on YouTube, anyone who had questions about that could go back and watch. Again, I don't know which one it was. It was maybe last year, early last year. But I do recall that that was quite extensive. We talked about, the interest on the loan being low and it making the most sense,
And we also just had we did raise, I mean, we were preparing for this earlier, and we did have the 5% increase already this year, so that's why we were saying we're covered.
It's all a part of our strategy for how we manage rates, but to Councilmember Bean's point, this is the next step. We have not received a grant agreement, nor have we received a bond agreement. Those things will come back as well, at which point you'll have the decision to say, yes, we want to execute this, or no, we don't, which there'll be opportunity again. And I believe there's another public hearing, maybe even that goes with, I can't remember if there's a hearing or if it's just public comment, but there are steps by which you will be able to analyze what has been offered and how it affects all of the things, including the rate at a future date. This is just to say that right now you're committed to looking at and discovering whether or not this is on our best interest. And if we can achieve a bond, we'd love to get to that point, because to your point, Councilmember Halverson, it is the best interest of the residents to save $10 million by getting a grant.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the resolution.
And I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The resolution is adopted. And moving on to E, our final 2023 budget amendments. And yes, Claudia, you would like to get up and speak at this point?
Claudia Demarest, 821 Marie Street. Item 5E, final 2023 budget amendments. At the March 6, 2024 Ishpeming City Council meeting, you had item 10C, final 2023 budget amendments. I told you then about the Michigan Department of Treasury Uniform Budget Manual for local units of governments, which states there is no authority to amend the budget after year end. After much discussion, the council and staff voted to table this item. Did anyone call the Michigan Treasury Department? I'm assuming no one did. The finance director said he is willing to meet with council members and any member of the public. Well, I called on March 7th at 10 o'clock a.m. and left a message on Mr. Getchow's voicemail with my name, phone number, and a brief message why I was calling. And he has still not returned my call. I guess he's only open to certain members of the public. Well, guess what? The council still does not have the authority to amend the final 2023 budget amendments. And you cannot change the 2023 budget. I don't care how busy you are. I don't care how you shift your numbers, and I don't care what other communities do. I only care about what Ishpeming does. I have been in touch with an office in Lansing, and they gave me the information to file a complaint, and if this council votes to amend the final 2023 budget amendments or change the 2023 budget, I will be following up with that office, and I won't be the only member of the public to do so.
All righty, so now we are moving on to the discussion of the 2023 budget amendment requests. When I got this, I guess I'll ask a quick question. When I got this in the packet, I go to the last page where it says in summary, and we've got gross increases, or gross decrease to departments at 2.6 million, gross increase to departments 780,000, and then grand total all funds 1.9 million. What does that exactly mean?
Seemed like the impression that people walked away from after the last meeting was that we had spent an additional 770,000 in total of all of our other appropriations. And I wanted to just point out that if this was a mid-year budget balancing act and not an exercise in budgetary monitoring and control, we would have seen this presented more like this, where we're decreasing appropriations in areas where we don't need it in order to increase appropriations in areas where we do need it. The reduction in appropriations for different cost centers is just an illustration that, no, the city didn't spend 770,000 on top of all of its appropriations for 2023.
And what's the final budget amendment then?
My recommendation would be, well, may I discuss a little bit of some background?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. First of all, my offer to speak with any member of the public does still stand. I apologize. I was out of the office on vacation for a week, but happy to sit down with you if you'd like. The information that I got from my auditor, or our auditors, is that they're not concerned about us amending the budget after fiscal year end. Part of that has to do with the way that Public Act, it's the Uniform Budget and Accounting Act and Public Act 621 of 1978 are worded. We need to amend a budget once it is apparent that a deviation from a General Appropriations Act is happening, and as soon as that amount can be determined. So when we were in September making projections on where we would be at year end, and when we were discussing that we were trying to figure out where the city was with best guess estimates, we amended the budget. We amended our General Appropriations Act. Then after that, in October, November, and December, we had financials, and those showed deviations. We discussed at length the deviations in December. The soonest that the final numbers became apparent to me, in my mind, was March 1st, when is our last day to accrue 2023 expenditures back to 2023. This is something, so basically it was told we're good as far as our auditors are concerned. This is something that the County of Marquette does as well. They just did their final 2023 budget amendments, March 5th. It's really up to council, though. It's council's budget. That's my recommendation. Ultimately, I'm here to make a recommendation. My recommendation would be to make an amendment to the budget that would be as minimal as possible without violating the Deficit Act or putting a fund in a deficit budget. So that would be like dipping into reserves versus just even expenditures over revenues for the year. I would also ask or recommend council, based on what I've read, to grant me or another administrative officer authority to transfer appropriations between funds without prior council approval, as Public Act 621 of 1978, Section 2 allows, which is another tip I got from our auditors, which helps us maintain tighter legal compliance as we move forward. So a situation like this happens at year end, where major streets is fine as a fund, for example, but one department spent more than the other, we can just make the transfer and go ahead. It's within the fund.
Can you, at the last meeting, we never got so far as to actually go through what each of these amounts was and what they were
Sure.
for. Can you just walk us through what those changes are, please?
Of course. So 22% of the proposed, I'm just going to talk about the increases. We're not going to talk about the decreases. 22% of the proposed increases was Partridge Creek compost, which is 100% reimbursable expenses from the USDA. That is just something that we are technically putting on our budget because the money is flowing through in the form of an expenditure in that fund. So 18% are health insurance and fringe benefit costs, which really stem from the way that we have revised our health insurance and fringe benefit allocations. It's an accounting tool, essentially. General fund salary costs make up 11%. These are staffing levels. Largely, that's due to year-end payroll accruals, so pushing expenses of payroll that crossed fiscal year. So maybe the last week of December is paid out in January, push that expense back. That's something in September that I failed to take into account with my initial projections. So we have 11% of Category B funding, non-participating costs in the form of sewer repairs. So that's Category B roadway funding. We had match costs for those. I believe those were discussed. Budget needed to be amended for those. We have 7% changes to debt service allocations on existing debt. That is me working with the auditors, kind of like our fringe benefit allocations, looking at the way we're spreading our debt service costs and deciding, you know what, this doesn't really hold up to math, we need to make some revisions. Another 7% in storm sewer repairs under the Partridge Creek Farm location. Another 7% of sewer and garbage service accruals, so those would be our sewer treatment costs and our landfill disposal costs being accrued back into the year at March 1st, like we discussed. Assessing services, 3%. My estimate on our contract services cost was a little low. Legal fees for the city attorney, my estimate on legal fee and contractuals was a little low. Those are just me missing my projections. General fund utilities, about 1%, and then the other 12% is spread very thin over multiple funds and cost centers. I do want to point out again, the way that we set a 2023 September amended budget, the question on everyone's mind was, where are we as a city? We were projecting where we were going to be at year end. I personally feel that we've been given finances every month. We've talked about these. The budgetary numbers have been in there. I think we're doing a good job of monitoring what's happening. Like I discussed with Councilmember Scanlon, we could have made an initial amendment in December if we had so chosen, and then gone back and re-amended when we did closing entries. We can certainly do that going forward. Happy to do that if that makes more sense. Again, I can only make a recommendation. It's council's decision.
And when we look at these budget amendment requests, the only things that have any type of like explanation as to what it is are two of them. One is health insurance, one is blight cleanup. You know, where we see that we went over in assessing, we see that we went over 15 and for the city manager, 25 for something else. You know.
Yep, so when we're looking at the general fund, that's all part of that 11% of general fund.
Right.
Salary costs and payroll accruals, health insurance and fringe benefits. It's just that larger number, which is why I tied out there. But if you look at some of the other funds, they're mainly underspent. So we're just, like roadways, for example, we spent more in drainage than we did in road repair. And like, so it's just drainage as an account is higher. Maybe winter service as an account is lower.
Your Honor, I would make a motion that we accept the final 2023 budget amendments as presented.
Support for discussion. So, hypothetical again,
I'm sorry, I have to interject here too. I still have questions about this budget and why, again, I goes back to, we went over on a lot of these budgets that never got, okay, we were aware of them, and you did make us aware of them, but those amendments were never presented for us to approve, okay? So now we're gonna move away from this budget without really ever knowing where we overspent and why, and how we can correct that going forward without knowing where all of our mistakes were here. Because there is just some of these departments that were just overspent, and I still don't understand why that money was overspent. And now we're just fixing the whole budget without really knowing what went wrong. So I'm just saying, I need to have some clarity on why some of these just why we went so far over budget and it was never presented at the time for us to discuss.
And perhaps maybe Karen can elaborate on that further tonight even, I don't know, or it can be
Yes. Right.
but at any point. But despite how any of us feel about the way that it went down, my question, it literally is, what happens if we don't?
I can answer that for you.
Okay.
You're in violation of the act.
So.
And if you amend the act, you are not in violation of the act.
So that's where I'm at, is we may not like the way that it was presented to us, and we may not ever do it this way again.
I'm hopeful we don't.
But where we're sitting right now, in my opinion, I don't think it's an option to not.
If, the question is more or less though,
Tabling it again, just so we can get some explanation then, until at least the next meeting.
the chief would like to say something here too. Yeah, go ahead.
If I may, you were talking about explanations. I know part of ours was the 50,000 for the police department. What this doesn't show is the actual grants and the revenue that was brought in on it.
Right.
So when you actually look at it and you look at the numbers, and I did all my numbers, I'm close to, I mean, for the year, if you would have, like I sent out my annual yearly report. I brought in over, for the total for the year, there's like $450,000 worth of grant money. And some of this, which doesn't show on here, 48,000 was payroll for our new recruits, which doesn't reflect in here. So yes, it looks like it's over,
That's a great.
but it's not showing the actual money that brought in. So 48,000 was for that. We had the SOR grant that I brought in. It's not reflecting the money that was actually paid from the state or the school to us for that grant. So that's why ours is over.
That's a great explanation.
Okay. May I provide a little further background too? So I know that there were a lot of acknowledgements, and I avoided going here initially because I don't want to like kick a dead horse. But there were a lot of acknowledgements of kind of the situation that we encountered last year when I came on, right? But I think specifically I'd like to address some of those things, and that should paint a bigger picture of why the budget was the way it was in the fall. I think I can pretty clearly explain that, and that should hopefully provide some background on why we're kind of just looking at where we went over at year end and trying to button up last year with the commitment, right, which we've discussed, to do quarterly budgetary meetings, or as Councilmember Halverson, I think, requested the last meeting, even monthly at regular meeting budget discussions. So we are addressing the behavior going forward, but maybe why we're not going too into depth of last year. So when I got here, I started here full-time in May. Your bank recons hadn't been done properly for about a year, which is something that would have been hard to see if you weren't an accountant. Council had not been presented with any sort of financial data that tied to anything for about 12 months. And did not I mean, the packet that you're getting now has all of this data. You weren't receiving this. You didn't have any, there was no report being made. Your budget, even that you passed in 2023, again, hard to see if you're not an accountant, but if you look at it, it doesn't balance. There's transfers from one fund that are coming from another fund supposedly, but never exist in that fund. It was a mess. You didn't have a budgetary control. By the time I got in here, I was working, and again, not trying to make an excuse, I was working 2 jobs and trying to basically keep this place financially good until we could rebuild, which meant that a lot of people, when we were discussing about the audit, about bank recons not being done, about tax money being, in our account and we don't know who it belongs to, the big question is, where's the city at? That first round of September budget amendments that I did was all about me providing nothing more than a projection. It wasn't directionary. There was no discussion. There was a little bit of discussion with Chad and Bill and stuff about what are you thinking for big projects for year end, or how much grant revenue sounded accurate. But there was not, September of an actual current year is not the time to start planning. We were trying to bandage and hemorrhage, and I was still a staff of 1. And then we pivoted right into 2024 budget discussions. So knowing that the year was open until March 1st, when we'd be doing final accruals, knowing that we were already dinged this violation, which if we don't amend this act, the violation, we got that in 2022. We were dinged for that as well. So knowing that the reason that happened is because Joe did this before we did final accruals, before we waited till everything was closed. That was my plan, for better or for worse. I do agree that if we were talking about a 2024 budget, that we would be having a lot more discussion, as we've done with the CIP, as we've done with this. In my mind, and with consideration of the background, it's not great. It's not a good thing. I wish it never happened, but right now we're just kind of trying to button up 2023. I don't know what we're going to learn from it. Nobody was at the wheel. Do you kind of get what I'm saying? There was no meeting, Joe wasn't meeting with staff. I didn't have a second to meet with staff. I didn't have a second to meet with my kids. So that's just where we're at.
One simple thing, though, I think I would have taken, put people at ease, though, is simple, getting somebody at Treasury to send in to just say that, okay, it's better you do this, or it's worse that you do this.
And where are we actually sitting moving into our 2024? Are we at a loss moving in, or are we balanced out then for 2023? What?
For 2023, it depends on the fund. The general fund, as we projected, was initially supposed to run at about a $380,000 deficit. We had a slightly better performance in the general fund than we expected from September. We're at a $328,000 deficit. So part of why we talked about health insurance at length and stuff when we were discussing the 2024 budget is because we needed to slow general fund spending. Believe we spent a lot of time worrying about that deficit that we had in the general fund. Not deficit, excuse me, it's a yearly expenditure over revenue. A deficit would be we had a lack of reserve in the fund. So there is also Article 7 of the Michigan Constitution, which gives cities the leniency to interpret laws in whichever way is most beneficial to them. This can also be used along with the point that there's pretty specific omission in the Uniform Budget Act and Public Act 621 of 1978 against making budget amendments after year end.
And what about?
If it's not in there, we can very likely do it.
So we're gonna make what, you're asking for us to make an $800 and something thousand budget amendment. Does the size of that, what does the state say in the size of that for a community our size too?
I think what I would specifically ask is to make as minimal of a budget amendment as possible while still maintaining compliance with the Uniform Budget and Accounting Act and while avoiding the, any sort of fund deficit. So I would try to cover the $700,000 with the available decreases from other departments within the funds. And then after that, I would not lower it the full 1.9 million that we could, just because if something else came or an auditor forced me to push something back into the prior year that I initially missed, we would then go over again.
So,
But this is
I
money,
didn't-
this
and I
isn't
didn't-
new money that we're spending.
Right, I didn't see the 1.9 million at our last meeting either. I thought we were at the 700,000.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
just about 800,000.
Right.
just about 800,000 of total increase, yes. And like I explained, had this been a 2024 budget discussion, we would have talked about where the money was coming from. But we are in 2023 right now, and there's no way to cut the spending because we're making an amendment based on a deviation. In the interest of pointing out that we had missed things, I did not show all of the funds that we had came in under. But I showed that here because it seemed like at the last meeting, when we were reading our packet, I tried to point out that a lot of the funds were actually performing better than expected. It was just departments, transferring between departments within a fund. So for example, major streets did more ditch cleaning than it did roadway maintenance.
So by pushing this to the next meeting so that I can do some calls, do some checking to find out a little more information for me and to comfortably say, yeah, I want to amend this budget and everything. Is that going to be detrimental? Is that going to be another a violation or something? Because
well, you have Article 7, which states that you can construe this law to your benefit. And then you have, maybe construe isn't the right word, I'm not an attorney, so please forgive me. But you also have the part of the act that says as soon as the deviation is apparent and the amount is available, and the amount has now been available. So again, I can only make recommendations. I do not personally feel, based on my discussions with colleagues, or you can, hop out onto the Marquette County meeting minutes and see they did a 2023 budget amendment just recently. We've done this for years here and never had an issue. I think through probably every council iteration that's existed here for the last 20 years, I'd guess.
So I think the issue that the council has to confront is how do we best stay within the law? And that's the recommendation coming from city staff, is the best way to do that under the circumstances being everything that happened over the last couple of years with finance. But there isn't an option under the law to have a budget deficit. You cannot, the state will not allow that. And if this council does not pass the amendments, as the statute says, as soon as the dollar amount can be determined, then you're not in balance. And the auditor will be required to report that to the state, that we have procedures to find it, but we have a council that won't accept.
Which is what happened last year.
Right.
We did not, we had expenditures over appropriations. And that's what we were dinged for. Even though we made a budget amendment after year end, we weren't dinged for budget amendment after year end. We were dinged for expenditures over appropriations.
Bottom line I had
so
is
you're
a
basically
simple-
telling me no matter how we vote right now, we're in violation, no matter what.
I'm telling you that it is my professional opinion and my recommendation as your accountant, who has consulted with the city attorney, who has consulted with your auditor and your auditing partner, and who has consulted with neighboring municipalities, that you are in violation of the act right now. And if you amend the budget, you will no longer be in violation of the act. But I would say furthermore, if I'm wrong, you are in violation of the same act that you're already in violation of. It's failure to yield, whether you blew a stop sign or a yield sign, if I'm wrong.
Well, I believe we have a motion and a second, and
Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
aye.
Opposed? No. Kathy, roll call.
Councilmember Bean,
Yes.
Councilmember Furby,
Yes.
Councilmember Halverson,
No.
Mayor Chapman.
No.
Motion
Okay, thank you for your consideration.
We can bring this back up in April if we have
At the
some
next meeting.
discussions on this. I would like to actually have someone contact Treasury, and a simple thing from Treasury would have probably changed 2 votes tonight. So,
But I mean, which is the case, it's over, it's a done deal.
Yep.
However, we did know for a couple of weeks that this meeting was happening, so
Mhm.
if you want to contact somebody at Treasury, I can do that.
well, I've called twice, didn't get a call back. Not showing my phone that I did try that, so, but it's also something we ask for all the information to be present for us to make decisions, and,
I'd be happy to contact Treasury and let them know
Yeah.
that we're out of compliance right now and how we can get back into compliance, or if we're just done for the year then, because I think that's the question that we're asking, right? I have contacts at Treasury who helped me work through deficit elimination plans last year, so that's what I can do.
I just think a simple question as to why the law says this when everybody does this, or what's the bigger problem? I think that's what the 2 of us are trying to figure out here, is,
Are we starting to do the same thing over again for the 3rd year?
and several of these deviations that were made last year could have been amended then, and,
And just weren't.
Weren't.
But that's a done deal. I guess where I'm at right now is, I guess I have been asking questions the whole time. This isn't just, I just started asking questions today or yesterday or whatever. I have been asking questions and trying to get this right in my own mind, okay? I just haven't gotten the clarity that I need to comfortably say, yes, I'm willing to amend an entire budget. And I'm just saying, I would like to have till at least the next meeting to find out what the lesser of 2 evils is on this.
I think with council's permission, then I will self-report us as in violation of Public Act
if that's how you-
621
if that's how
and the
you'd
Uniform
like to
Budget and
handle it.
Accounting Act. Because it's always better to self-report early on, and we can start working with Treasury. And then we can decide what they want to do, if they want to accept a late budget amendment or not. Ultimately, our auditors are the one who report to the state, who report those violations, but we can self-report. So I think the best measure for me as a financial professional would be to self-report, because we all feel that it's the feeling of my legislative body that we may be in non-compliance, and then we'll go from there based on their recommendation.
Well, I guess that's what we just voted on, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
Okay,
great, thank you very much.
yep.
Carol, motion.
Support. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We are